Hello and good morning to you. This is Cliff Graves on Train World Boxing. Just 1 second. I am just closing a window there so we've got a little bit more privacy. So I just want to sort of go through the fights that were on Dazyn last night and just give my views, basically. I think the first fight where the Georgian was up against the Liverpudlian, I think the Liverpudlian was outboxed, and I think it was the right decision to call that fight off, because I think if it had gone on any longer, I think he would have been hurt quite badly. I just think he was a cut above the Georgian fighter, was a cut above the Liverpudlian, and I think that is definitely a fighter that's going to go a long way. Definitely. I think the Liverpudlian should not lose art and come again. But I think he was mismatched there. I think the guy was just too good. But full marks for him for taking on the Georgian. But it was a complete mismatch, and he was just too good for him. So that was a well-deserved win for the Georgian. I'm just having a senior moment now. I've got it all written down somewhere, but I've lost my pad. Okay, so that's what being 61 does to you. Anyway, so the next fight up was with Solomon Dacres and Serenko. And I think he fought the right fight. This Ukrainian was coming in on the front foot, weaving his way in so he could get into that mid-range position and then fire off big heavy shots. That was the plan, to get Dacres out of it. Now Dacres boxed to order, and I think he did box intelligently. He was using his jab, he was using his footwork, he was using the ring, and he was like setting up the Ukrainian with the jab, okay, so that when he comes in, he can whack up a rear uppercut, rear uppercut, straight up through the middle, and then come downstairs with the left hook liver shot. And he did that. As the Ukrainian came in, he was getting picked off. I think if I was going to be super critical to Dacres, Solomon Dacres, because I think it was a great performance, intelligent performance, good boxing, good to watch, tell you that. Yeah, I think so that's just a fly coming. Piss off. I'll get the fly spray out. Yeah, I think if I was being super critical, he did box to order, but he started to gas a little, which, you know, if I was training Solomon Dacres, I would say to him, you're skills, your boxing skills, your boxing brain is coming on very, very nicely. But we need to work more on your strength and stamina to break you into these longer rounds fights. Because I do see him getting right up to the top, Solomon Dacres. 12 rounders. I really, really do. But I think that was the thing, if I was being super critical, was his strength and stamina started to wane towards the end, and he made some mistakes and got caught. I think if he'd been stronger and possessed more stamina, he probably would have stopped the Ukrainian. But full marks and great performance. So after that was, I think, one of the most controversial fights, decisions that I think I've ever watched, ever. And I'm 61, and I used to watch Sports Night on a Wednesday, Sports Night on a Saturday, Grandstand. Do you remember that? Grandstand on a Saturday afternoon. With Harry Carpenter, and my era was watching Frank Bruno win. All of them. Eubanks Senior, Nigel Benn, of course, all of them. But that I felt Stevenson was robbed. Now, if you are listening to this and you don't know boxing, I kind of dig where you're coming from, but I think if you do understand boxing, I think you would understand that Stevenson was boxing to order. His team, his coaches would have said to him, he's 6'6", lap him, his opponent. He's got a long, gangly reach and very, very educated right jab, because it was southpaw, like I say. When you're an orthodox, what you have to do is almost do everything in reverse, rather than attempting to get your left jab off, and especially with a tall, gangly, much longer reach than you. That would have been the wrong type of fight Stevenson would have fought, but he didn't fight like that, did he? It would be get in there, rough him up and hurt him. And that's exactly what he did. In and out, in and out. This is where your road work comes in, the jogging and the sprinting, the jogging and the sprinting, the jogging and the sprinting, the hill sprints, jogging, hill sprints, jogging and sprinting, jogging and sprinting, jogging. It gives you that ability to go from second gear right up to top gear in an instant, explosively. And Stevenson was doing that. He was getting in there and he was roughing him up. At one point, Lapin, more than one point, complained his arm was hurt, almost fell out the ring. And where was Stevenson when he was hanging over the ropes? Right over the other side. The referee had put him right over the other side of the ring. Then there was times, and I watched this from the fights from this perspective, okay? I watch it, and the referee was breaking them apart, predominantly ticking off Lapin. What Stevenson was doing was not letting him get set. We're getting that right jab off, and he was getting in there and he was being successful. I scored that one just 2 rounds to lap in, 2 rounds. And I believe Louis Stevenson was robbed. The biggest injustice I think that I've seen in professional boxing ever. And I've watched some of Tyson Fury's fights and thought, no way did he lose that. No way. No way. But that's another story. But that, to me, I will never forget that. So I think the Ukrainian will be going back quite sore, back to good old Ukrainian soil. And I think Louis Stevenson, I tell you what, you won that fight. But it's pro boxing. You brush yourself down. We've seen what you can do. And you've got a lot to offer in professional boxing. So brush yourself down. Chin up. And just move forward onto the next fight. But I've learned the next fight I found boring. I'm sorry. I found it boring. And I was looking for that 10th round to finish because I was bored. With Stevenson before, I was looking for that 10th round and saying, come on, Louis, come on. Come on, Lewis. Sorry, I called you Louis. It's Lewis, isn't it? Lewis, not Louis. Apologise. Come on, Lewis. Come on. Come on. Good. You know. And when the 10th bell rang, I said, because my wife was watching it, he won that. I'm telling you that, he won that. He might have lost 2 rounds, but he won that. Terrible. Still reeling from that. But this fight I just found boring. I'm sorry. Just found boring. So I ain't going to comment on it, but I just found it. Yawn. Yeah, I've done the boxing before, don't worry. I know what it's like to get a broken nose in the ring. I know what it's like to be headbutted across the nose accidentally in the ring. I know what it's like to get a cut eye in the ring. I know what it's like to get punched straight up into the solar plexus in the ring, the liver, the floating rib. I know it's like to do all the runs, early morning runs in the rain. I know about that. So I ain't no armchair observer. I ain't no expert in professional boxing, admittedly. But the L plates are down. So I think to call me an armchair observer would be a little bit unfair. So I thought that fight was boring. Now, on to this fight. Usyk and Dubois. Well, I'm a Brit and Dubois is British. So I will always get behind our fighter, the British fighter. Always. If it's a domestic, like we had with Conor Benn and Eubanks Jr., or Eubanks Sr. and Nigel Benn, I've been betwixt between the two because I've always liked the Eubanks, but I've always liked the Benns. I've always rated Nigel Benn. So with domestics like that, it's always been difficult, really difficult. But if I was picking a winner, you know, I went for Eubank Senior, and then obviously in the Conor Benham fight, again the same thing, between the two. I went with Eubanks Jr. But with the Dubois Usyk fight, obviously, because I'm a patriot, I'm gonna go with Dubois, aren't I? But he never got into the fight. He never did. It was intelligent boxing by Usyk. And prior to the build-up, which we call it fight hype, you know, it's always fight hype, isn't it? That's what it is. It's just fight hype. I did believe Dubois would have put it on him. And it would have been Dubois being the victor in the 5th round. But it just goes to show you how wrong you can be, isn't it? You know. I don't think there is any boxer on the boxing circuit, heavyweight, that will beat Usyk. After a performance like that, it was exemplary. I really don't. Whether he is Usyk an all-time great, I would argue against. One wonders, would he have beaten Mike Tyson in his prime? Would he have beaten Lennox Lewis in his prime? Would he have beaten Muhammad Ali in his prime? You know, I'm not so sure, if I'm being honest. I think Tyson would have just overwhelmed him with aggression and nailed him. I think Lennox Lewis would have shooted him with his boxing brain. I really, really do. In his prime. Muhammad Ali in his prime. I think would have just dismantled him in 3 or 4 rounds, Usyk. But it was an exemplary performance by Usyk, and he deserves the attribute of undisputed world heavyweight champion. He does. You cannot take that away from him. From a personal viewpoint, and it's not personal, but I just don't like Usyk. Now that's just my opinion. I've never sat down and I've never talked privately on the level with the man. So I'm not judging him on that. I'm certainly not judging him on his belief, because I have the same faith as he does, Christianity. So I'm not on that. It's just I can't kind of like put my finger on it, but I suppose I find him a bit annoying. I think. But that maybe is going into the realms of being a bit judgmental. But I think I am allowed to say that I just don't like the guy. I am not taken away from his performance. That was exemplary. And I don't think that there is anyone that will beat him. And I do believe that he will retire undefeated. My hat goes off to Usyk, because he has spent time away from his beloved family, and that must have been hard for him. And they'll be reunited, which will be good for him. And that is pretty much it. What I will say is, when you have been beaten and been beaten good, and I've tasted that in the ring, when you've had a hard fight, stood toe to toe, and I've had that in the ring, in tournament, in proper contest, in a proper bout, a proper fight. When you believe you've won and you've lost, and I've had that, there's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of emotions, and people, boxing crowds, get very emotional, especially if it's their son in there, or their husband, or their boyfriend, or their girlfriend, or whatever. But boxing crowds, even amateur, can get very, very emotional. And I think I can say this. Post the fight, I can say what I've said. Post the fights. I did believe Dubois would win. I was rooting for Dubois. And I think he'll need to take a long, hard look now at which direction he goes in professional fighting. But I was rooting for you, Daniel. I really was. So I haven't been two-faced. I haven't welshed on what I've said. I've said I was rooting for Daniel Dubois, the better man won, which was Usyk. But I don't really like Usyk. I don't think he will be touched by any heavyweight out there at the moment. I think it'd be right to hang up his gloves, Usyk, as undisputed, undefeated world heavyweight champion within the next 2 fights, I think. And then leave it. Just leave it. Become a trainer or whatever, but leave it. And that's it, folks. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll speak to you again soon. This is Cliff Graves from Trainwell Boxing. Take it easy.